Belmont after we stand 1-1. And right now, it's a pleasure to welcome in Jim Clark from the Boston Herald. And Clarky's been on the scene all day, and I'm sure Jake has a few questions for Jim. But Jim, just first of all, overall, what are your impressions today?
A long day, very tiring day. They started at 10 o'clock this morning. I got here about 10:30, and if you've tried ever, transversing this place from rink to rink, trying to find what game is going on, you're lucky, what town you're in, and I'll be happy if I can find my car, considering the construction going on out there. I think I'm parked a half a mile away, but it's a fun day. It's good to get out here and see all of the teams and try and bounce around and catch as much of the action as you can. You can't really put too much stock into it because you just never know. It's a jamboree. Some teams are trying, some teams are mixing and matching, and seeing what works best. So, but it's a good time to get out and catch up with some people and see the faces again and see what's going on.
How much do you read into some of these scores from today? Because like you said, it is a jamboree, but you do see a score like Arlington 3, Malden Catholic 1, or Xaverian 3, Hingham 2, and you think, might have something there.
Oh, absolutely. And, like I said, I don't think this is the Malden Catholic team that you're going to see in March. I know I talked to John McLean a little bit after the game, and I know he's definitely, working on some stuff here and there. And, but absolutely, you have to be impressed with what Arlington out there. And you knew Arlington was going to be good this year. They were pretty much a junior-dominated team last year, and so he brings everybody back. He's one of those rare public schools that's had that good fortune that he's been able to keep the core together. Hasn't lost kids to Catholic schools or prep schools or to junior hockey. So, and from what I understand, a very good freshman class as well. So, but even he's trying to, see what works best and figure out the lines and all that. But you had to be impressed with the talent. That was an impressive performance.
Yeah, and they all top to bottom. They know the system by now coming through, and
sure,
and that's going to help. And you think of the public school teams like, 2 or 3 others in the Middlesex League, and certainly Hingham's and the way Framingham and Braintree have played the last couple of years. Those are the programs you want to be at. You want to be compared with if you're a public school, and they're there now.
Yeah.
The one surprise I saw today, not to get, picking on one items, odd items, but I was kind of surprised the way St. Mary's handled Framingham.
Yeah, obviously, Framingham's got the new coach, Will Ortiz. He was part of Paul Spear's staff last year, so it's not a new staff per se. You don't know whether Will's, doing anything differently from what Paul did. But I think that's more St. Mary's than anything. St. Mary's is, as well-rounded a team experience as you're going to find at this time of year. They have Dante Mirabito back, who was on our Herald Dream team. He's got both the Panty brothers back. One of them, I believe, was Michael, who missed most of last year with the collarbone injury, and he's got him back in the fold. He's got Eric Pedro back, I believe. He's got a pretty deep and solid and experienced team. So
and he's got a good goaltender.
And yeah, absolutely. And I knew that Framingham. I got an email from Willie Ortiz the other day, and it seemed like he had a fairly decent, experienced, talented team back. So yeah, that was quite the eye opener, seeing that score.
What other scores have jumped out at you at all? Ones that we haven't mentioned yet.
I've seen some decent Division 2 and 3 games so far. I've heard some good things so far this year about Rockland and Cohasset down on the South Shore.
South Shore League, absolutely.
Both of them won their games today. Cohasset beat Worcester 3-2, and I think Rockland beat Auburn 2-1. So those are pretty good scores. I'll tell you a team that actually kind of impressed me way over on the right side. This just cut out. Latin Academy actually looked pretty solid. They were playing Northbridge. I think that was a 4-1 game. It's a Division 3 team, a city team, so they're going to be hard-nosed, blue-collar. But I was fairly impressed with them as well. Just kind of going back through the mental Rolodex here to remember some of the games that went on this morning. Like you said, there's Xaverian jumping out to that 3-0 lead. 2 goals, I guess, in the first minute or whatever it was.
Over Hingham,
and then, then Hingham kind of poured it on in the second period and couldn't quite get all the way back. But, both those teams are going to be in the mix at some point this season. So
yeah, 2 teams that really, I said this a couple of times today, but they remind me a little bit of each other. Xaverian's a lot smaller than Hingham is, but, they both got Hingham goaltending is going to come. It's a little bit of an unsure spot right at the moment, but certainly Cam Dutra played all last year for Xaverian, but they're both veteran teams that the kids playing now have played more and more coming up, and they know the system. Both teams are very well coached. They're not going to take a lot of penalties. Despite Xaverian's reputation for playing football on ice sometimes, they're more disciplined because I think coaching staff is going to convince those kids that they can win a lot of games if they play the game the right way.
Right. And, the Xaverian's always going to be in the mix of the Catholic Conference here somewhere. Of course, the question is, what do some of those other teams have coming back? I know St. John's Prep has a very good defense back. BC High, they're going to find some reinforcement somewhere for the guys that they lost. So they'll be in the mix. And obviously, MC has got the bullseye in their back. So, they'll work through their early season struggles per se. A lot of teams I'm sure wish they had the early season struggles that Malden Catholic's having right now. But,
yeah, the one X factor in that league is CM.
Yeah, and then who knows what CM? Third coach in as many years. Larry.
Larry Rooney's a great coach.
Yeah, Larry's a good coach, and he's been in the school for a couple of years, and so I'm pretty sure he has a pretty good grasp on who the players are. It's just making the transition. You saw it was not an easy transition last year for Mark Hornforth after having Coach Hansen for so many years. So they'll be kind of a wild card there as well.
Yeah, I think you got to keep the kids that are in school playing for the team if you can.
Right.
And I think nothing against Coach Cornforth and his staff. I mean, they did a good a job as they could, but they were, they didn't have all their bullets.
Right.
And that hurts. And
yeah.
I think that was, everybody thought, oh, okay, he'll be here for a while and we'll feel him out. But if we've only got 1 year left, we may do something else. And I think you got to go in with Larry Rooney's more known locally than Mark was, and I think people will say, hey, you're here, you're going to play for CM.
Right. And they'll have to find a goalie because they had Brandon Collett for 4 years, and obviously now he's, I believe
4 or 8?
However many it was. I think he's out at Albany Academy now.
Oh,
maybe.
okay.
He's
a heck of a goalie.
He was a great goalie. But that's going back to the dark ages. CM has always been goalie central. So it'd be interesting to see if that trend continues.
Who are some of the publics to keep an eye on this year?
Obviously, we mentioned Arlington. We've mentioned Hingham. Burlington's always going to be in the mix there. Reading, Reading's got the two Tobin brothers back. So
how the Reading-Marshfield
was 1-1. Now Reading was, I've been bouncing around, so I caught a little bit of that game.
I saw
Reading looked pretty solid early. They were up 1-0. I know Marshfield came back and tied it late. So that ended up a 1-1 game. And both of those teams going to be in the mix. Marshfield's always a talented Division I South team.
Yeah, I like that Marshfield and Braintree are really trying to expand their schedules.
Yeah, Braintree 1-1 with Pope Francis, so that's a pretty good result there. Pope Francis, they lost quite a bit. Petrick went to the USHL. Riley Pratson, I believe, is down to Selects Academy down in Connecticut now, and they lost Devin Tung up to Northfield Mount Herman. So they're another one of those programs that's kind of feeling their way out a little bit. I think it's going to be a good challenge for Coach Foley this year to not have that top line talent. It's going to be more like a team that they had in the past 5 or 10 years, as opposed to the really high-end type of talent that they've had the last couple of years. It's going to be interesting to see.
Pratson must have left.
Pratson left. Pratson went down to Select Academy, down in Connecticut.
But Peretz
is the one guy that they still have.
Yeah,
he was clearly the best player on the ice today. So
yeah.
And Braintree is going to be a big, tough blue-collar team. So that was an interesting matchup today.
Braintree working in a new goaltender, David McDonough, now playing at Franklin Pierce collegially. So it'll be something to keep an eye on.
And Braintree's another one of those teams that's always had good goaltending going back to Nick Anson a couple of years before McDonough, and their coach Fasano is always going to play fairly close to the vest type of game. So they'll be right in the mix there in the Bay State. I'll be interested to see how Needham is. They finally got a little bit of stability there with Mike Hoban in his second year after they had 4 coaches.
I believe it was
4 years
4
or whatever it was.
Yep.
I'll be interested to see how Chucky does with Norwood. That's a team that they're young, but I think he's looking forward to the challenge of building that program back up.
Yeah, to the North Shore and South Shore ever meet.
Right. Right.
We want to mention we're not trying to slight the game out there. Newton North and White and Belmont in their maroon. They are tied at 1 with 9:54 to go in their second half of a 15-minute period, constituting the second half. And here's a chance for Newton North, but we'd be remiss for all our fans if we didn't take advantage of the opportunity to speak with Jim Clark, which we're doing right now. So we want to continue on with our conversation.
These are a couple teams here that kind of intrigue me. I've actually heard a couple Middlesex League coaches talk up Belmont a little bit this year. They have the twin brothers, the Dacey brothers. Kevin the goalie, I believe.
Yes.
And Connor is the other brother. So they've gotten a little bit of a mention this year. And then, Newton North is a team that always kind of seems like they slip through the cracks a little bit in the Bay State. This is the team that went to the South semifinals last year.
Oh, we talked earlier. They upset Braintree
right.
when they were the top seed in the South last year.
And Jamie's done a tremendous job in the couple of years that he's been there, and keeping the kids in the system as well. So they're a team to keep an eye on as well.
And I like that
Belmont just took the lead.
Yeah, the same guy just notched the second goal, Cataldo. But I like that Coach Gresser today, no bones about it, he's playing 4 lines.
Right.
And he wants to get everybody into the mix.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that's something I think a lot of these coaches are doing. They've been on the ice less than a week.
Right.
And if they've had a scrimmage or two before they got here, I'm talking not just Newton North, but all teams.
Right.
This is a good opportunity to mix and match and see what some of these third, fourth, maybe even fifth liners can do. You're using both goalies if you have 2 goalies dressed, that kind of game.
Yeah, the second goalie's in for Belmont now as well, Nico Carrera.
So getting back to what Jake asked earlier, you can't put a ton of stock into the actual scoreboard results of what you see. But it's a great feeling out process for a lot of these teams to see what they have on the ice and how they match up, and to get a look at some of the talent that some of these teams have coming back.
Yeah, I think like Jake said earlier, the final score's not important. It's how you get the goals or allowed the goals that are going to keep you awake at night.
Right.
If you're the coach.
I was talking to I think it was Daryl Borges, who's the coach at Coyle Cassidy, and they played Linfield. Linfield beat him 2-1, and he said he went up to the Linfield coach, and he said, I just want you to know, he says, last year I played Hal Gill and Lincoln Sudbury, and they went to the Garden, and 2 years ago he played Concord Carlisle. He said they went to the Garden. He says, well, so congratulations. So keep an eye on your boys from Linfield there, Paul.
Yeah, well, I caught a little bit of that one, and some of those kids, I was fortunate enough to have a whistle around my neck when some of those kids were a lot younger, and I didn't recognize some of them now walking through because I haven't seen them in a while, and they're saying hello to me, and I'm just going, hey buddy, how's it going? And I apologize, and then realize who they are, and of course I know them, and it's great to see them having success.
Yeah, and they've got John Gardner, who's an alum there. He played for Vid Mirasulo, so he's got a lot of pride in that program, and he wants to build it back up again. And the Cape Ann League's a tough league. I love those Division II North Shore leagues. You get up to some of those public school games between Cape Ann League teams or Northeastern Conference teams, and those are great wars, no matter who you get out there. So but Linfield, they're a program on the rise, and I think he'll do a good job up there.
Yeah, I agree, and it's too bad, speaking of the North Shore, that a lot more of those North Shore teams don't make it here on a day like today.
Well, it's funny because Linfield's a team that had never been here before. They're here today. I don't think Masco, if Masco had ever been here, they're fairly new. Danvers has been here the last 2 years. Steve Baldessari.
Yeah, so the Danvers guys. Yeah, that's good to see.
So you're getting a little bit more of a mix, and personally, I like to see that a lot of the Central Mass teams come here because you don't see those teams during the regular season at all. So you get the teams like Hudson, Marlboro, Auburn. Neshoba was a team that really impressed me this morning. 2-time Division III. They beat Lowell Catholic 5-1.
Oh, Lowell Catholic's
so
had a good program.
2-time Division IIIA state champions got bumped up to Division III this year, and they don't look like they missed a beat.
Wow.
So that was a pretty impressive result as well.
I believe it matched a record this year, 64 teams in attendance.
Right, because I think the late night special, Situate and Norton, was a late add-on.
Yes.
The 5-10 game that unfortunately I'll be on the road back to Boston before they drop the puck on that one, but. And I've actually heard great things about Situate this year. Situate
had a nice run in the D2 South last year.
Coach Breen, the Coach Breen retirement tour, I believe, is on its 17th year right now. You hear it every year. I heard it back in 2001. I think this is Mike Breen's last year. He's still here, but I heard, he's got a ton back from that team that took Medfield to the wire last year. And I've heard really good things about them in Division II South, so I'll be curious to see how they do.
Well, Newton North just tied things up here. A bullet from the point off the stick of Will Thompson. Not sure if it got deflected on the way in, but kind of a rude welcome here. We may see it again. Right off the faceoff, it goes back to Thompson. He steps into one, and he's able to beat Armin Kakian, who just came off the bench cold. Not a good way to come into the game and have to face that bullet. But, again, he's getting some ice time, which is nice.
Yep.
So 2-2 in this one. Again, for the most part, if there were 64 teams, 32 games, I'd wager 20 to 24 of them are one-goal games or ties.
Yeah, there's one point early this morning. There was, I think, 3 or 4 1-1 ties in a row that I
Right.
saw.
Yeah.
I think we had 2 ties on this rink. We had East Boston, Assabet ended in a 1-1 tie, and then we had the scoreless tie.
Yeah,
Drawing a blank.
Westford and Bridgewater Raynham, I believe.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Clarkie knows. Bridgewater Raynham. Could be some movement in Bridgewater Raynham is sort of another story for another time, but the league realignment, Bridgewater Raynham trying to get into the Bay State Conference.
Yeah, there's something going on with the Big Three next year, and I got to try to remember exactly what it is. And there's a lot of stuff going on with some of the schools down in the Cape.
Yep.
So there's a lot of shakeup. A lot of shakeup coming. So
we get the Bay State Conference is losing Dedham and possibly Norwood.
Right. Definitely
So,
Dedham is going to TVL.
Yep, Dedham. That's set in stone for next fall.
Yeah.
Norwood still kind of feeling it out. Do they want to follow suit or stay in the Bay State? So yeah, the Big Three, the Old Colony League looks like it's going to be pretty much finished. And then Marshfield, got to keep an eye on them with the Atlantic Coast League, see what happens in terms of if that Cape League comes to be.
Because that's a tough draw for them to have to go down to Nauset and
Exactly.
Falmouth, to play their league game. So.
Yeah.
Paul McNamara and Jake Levin talking with Jim Clark from the Herald. And Clarky, I wanted to talk a couple of minutes about a lot of your concentration in the offseason was the number of coaching changes, the number of coaches that left, and the new coaches, the turnover primarily in Eastern Mass this off season.
Yeah.
36 total?
35, I believe it was. And I actually looked back, and I think it was 36 2 years ago and something like 29 last year. Some of those are schools that have gone through a couple of changes in that same time. But
dropped hockey, merged.
It's a tough time for coaching. It's a lot of thankless hours, a lot of late night hours or early morning hours or both. So it's a tough thing. They do a great job for the most part. The coaches are a lot of times in a no-win situation, but you just try to keep up with it and get to know the names and the faces and everything and see what happens.
But that I think that too is related to what you were just talking about, Jake. Some of the shift in leagues, the more stability you have in longevity from coaching standpoints, or the legacy, if it's assistants that take over and keep the program going, the more stability there is in a league overall.
Right.
All things being considered, all things being equal, rather. You can't control some things, but
right. But I mean, a good example is like with Norwood, Chuck Allen. It was a great opportunity for him to come back down, and be closer to home. He works out of the Batchco rink, and so that was a great opportunity for him. So that opens up Bishop Fenwick and Jimmy Quinlan, who was a veteran, old school hockey coach. I talked to him on the phone the other night. He jumps back in. After being out of the game, well, not really out of the game, he said he got a chance to watch his kids play in college, and then got back to working with Saugus a little bit on the lower levels, and you kind of get that itch again.
Sure.
You see that happen every once in a while.
Yeah, you can take a guy out of a rink, but you can never take the rink out of the guy.
Yep.
You had a couple of teams that unfortunately couldn't field a team this year. A couple schools, I should say, that couldn't field a team. Watertown, I think, is the most noteworthy.
Watertown was one, unfortunately, we saw coming for a little while. They had thin numbers even when they went to the state championship game a couple years ago. They rode Anthony Bisconi and 4 or 5 excellent players, but they weren't a very deep team back then. They probably had maybe 13 or 14 kids, and then you lose that one class, and next thing you know, you're dealing with 9 or 10. Salem was another one. I understand they just didn't have a goalie anywhere in the system, so that's really tough to. Once Essex Tech split off, and they built the rink on campus and they started their own program. That just made it kind of tough on Salem.
I know Milford is another.
Milford was another one. They were close to packing in last year. I think they kind of hung on by a thread last year, and so they went and they're co-oping now with Hopedale. And I talked to Michael Balzerini, who was their coach, and his sons played there. So that was a tough situation for them, but he was able to jump over and take over the Mansfield job when that one opened up. So he stayed in the Hockomock. Unfortunately for him, Hopedale already had a coaching staff in place. So, there really wasn't an opportunity for him there. So, but, something opened up in Mansfield, and he was able to jump into that, so that worked out.
So do you know what's happened with Salem's players or Watertown's players from a co-op standpoint?
Watertown, I believe, is doing a JV program. They're able to do that. they're hoping to build the numbers back up again and maybe get back in varsity a year or so. They wanted to try to go independent this year, drop out of the middle league and play a D3 independent schedule because they just would have gotten murdered trying to play the Burlingtons and Reddings and Arlingtons. That's a tough situation for them.
Absolutely.
On a good year,
Yes.
never mind. The fact that they did as well as they did, a couple 3 years ago with that team and the numbers they had was miraculous. So their hope is they kind of build it back up again. They haven't folded. They're just going to compete at JV. My understanding is the Salem kids are going to co-op with Essex Tech as a JV program. Because the MIA rule is if you have enough kids in your school to sustain yourself, you can't co-op with another school. So I believe Essex has enough for their own varsity team. And so the Salem kids are going to try to play JV at Essex Tech.
Yeah, that's a shame, and it's an inexact science. I mean, all over the place. A few years back, Salem was a co-op with Hamilton Wenham.
Right.
And
which has their own program again. So,
right.
So those things happen.
Ebbs and flows in population.
And the bottom line is you just try to do whatever you can to try to keep the kids on the ice,
Right.
However you can. It's an unfortunate situation, high school hockey these days, but,
I mean, it is good to see some of these new programs popping back up, like a Hamilton Wenham and an Essex Tech. So there is a little bit of good coming from some of these off-season changes. You just wish it could come without these teams folding or having to suspend operations as it is for a year.
Mike Gresser, the goaltender for Newton North, in there now with 2 good saves. Right on the doorstep was Michael Pergamo with the potential go-ahead, and Michael Gresser appreciating his coach, his dad, Jamie, putting him in there.
I was going to say, assuming that's dad's son, which that's never an easy situation.
No, not at all.
Having a father-son coaching relationship, you just never know how that's going to work out.
And he just made it more difficult by making 2 terrific saves there.
Yep.
And if they get the winner right there, putting it home is number 21. That is. That's number 7, right? It's Curtis Judd, I think.
Okay, yeah.
That looks right.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of times.
Judd's been one of the top players the last couple of years, yeah.
He's a defenseman. Boy, he plays all over the ice.
I got to try to remember the numbers of some of these kids,
Well, you're free to take this if you can decipher.
Well, I've been iPhone photoing the score sheets down in the office for all afternoon, so.
Oh, those must be a joy to read.
Some of them are. Some coaches are nice enough to have the nice little,
the
stickers with the full rosters on them, and some of them.
Back to youth hockey.
Some of them you'll be happy if you get a first initial,
Right. Clock winding down under 10 seconds, and Newton North with the go-ahead potential game winner in the last minute, and they're going to hang on and get the win here over Belmont in a pretty evenly matched game here. It looked to me like a tie was the right answer here, but Newton North's going to go home with a little bit of a better bus ride than Belmont.
So, all right, Jim, thank you so much, as always, for coming on.
No problem.
Jim Clark, you can follow him on Twitter at @InTheSlot, and it's an underscore.
With underscores.
_the_slot.
Yep.
The #1 source for high school hockey information in Massachusetts, Jim Clark. Give him a follow. Thank you again for joining us.
And Clarky, final note, I hope you're spending a lot of time on those holiday tournaments and updating those, because that's always a good resource to see.
I've got the list put together. I think I have all the matchups all set. So
excellent.
It's always a fun time. That's a fun week trying to update the spreadsheet, because then I got to go in and update the matchups once the games are set. So, but it's
and there's a lot of them.
It's a labor of love. This is what we do. This is what hockey people do.
Well, always a pleasure, and we'll see you around the rink, of course.
Mac, Jake, thank you very much.
As always.
Clarky, always a pleasure.
Bye, guys.
Great job.
All right, Paul, that about does it for us today as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's